Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. Don't run, don't hide, don't be shy. Just like, comment, and please subscribe. Dealing with the stress, dealing with the pain. Trying to find a way. Yes, sir. Welcome back to another episode of the TD World. It's your host, TD. And you know what? I'm just glad that another week has passed. We are finally into the football season, so things are starting to get interesting. Obviously, we are, in preseason, so things are very vanilla. Things are very, plain, basic, but it's always exciting, I should say, for us to be able to see what these new prospects are, see how things are looking. But as beyond just football and movies, we'll get into that later on. Also, some anime announcements with some of the series that I personally follow. I don't know if y'all follow them, but you're gonna hear about it. But beyond that, let's go into our first segment, trying to dive into another one of Tony's tips. I want to say that last week we were talking about being able to have game and you being able to know what ingredients you're going to need in order for you to be able to have the type of game that you want to have, because a lot of y'all just ain't got it. But the same way that I was giving my fellas some advice, I'm going to give you ladies a couple of tips, because I don't feel like you have the same struggles as us when it comes to needing game. Quite frankly, you ladies can do whatever the hell y'all want to, and you will always be able to find attention. But not all attention is good attention. So with that being the case, I want to give you ladies tips on after you find a guy that you are attracted to, after you find a dude that you thinking like, you know what, I can see me with this dude, then I'm going to teach you how it is that you can lock that guy down. So whether you're the most traditional or the most modern woman out there, listen, you follow these tips, so long as he is even the most remotely into you, you're giving yourself a hell of a shot. Don't say I never did nothing for you. Okay, step one, you gotta assess the market. Be real with yourself. Where do you stand when it comes to this guy? A lot of you ladies tend to oversaturate your value. And I think that that's great. That a lot of ladies encourage each other to feel the best about themselves. The problem with that, though, is that we're not being honest. Listen, I'm with you. Every single one of you ladies are God's gift to the world. But it is your decision, but it is your job to find out if you are a PS5 or a Gucci bag or socks. Because trust and believe, I'm grateful for both on Christmas, but they're not gonna get the same reaction. It's the same thing when you're with a guy. The higher you are on his list of options, the higher your chances are of securing him. The lower you are on those list of options, the more you're gonna have to compromise in order to get that guy. And quite frankly, ladies, there comes a point where it doesn't matter how much you're willing to do. There's a certain level of self-respect you should retain for yourself. And, obviously to each their own. If you're cool, getting cheated on or being talked down to or whatever the case may be, to each their own. Everybody has different levels of tolerance when it comes to their relationship, but me personally, there's just certain levels of respect and certain levels of gratification and reciprocation that I expect out of my partner, and most partners that I've had expected the same thing. But once you assess where you are in the market, once you understand where you stand in terms of his level of attraction and interest to you, coupled with how you stand in the competition, if there is any. Step two, it's not being to pick the married or the selected. Listen, ladies, I understand that an act that requires a certain level of humility for you to be able to put your own pride and put your own ego to the side and say, if I want this guy, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to retain this guy. Because the reality is that humility is the key to a stable relationship. As men, could you imagine how silly it would sound if we said, well, I'm not going to go out and get a decent amount of money and be in relatively decent shape, and I'm not taking showers for these girls? It would just sound delusional. Because at the end of the day, y'all not coming to us. Most of the time, we coming to you. Which means if we're coming to you, then we've got to be able to come to you in a way that caters towards you so we don't, I don't know, scare you off. Ladies, it's the same thing when you're with a guy. You have got to be able to find where you can fit in to be able to cater to that guy. Now, I'm not just talking about some rich dude, you know what I mean? I mean any dude. If you got a guy who is working 12 hours a day, or hell, even if he's working 9-10 hours a day, and the guy just wants to have a home cooked meal when he gets home. If you got nothing that you're doing that halts you from being able to do that, just get it done. Maybe he doesn't require you to cook and clean. Maybe he just wants you to not be so argumentative. Is it not worth being a little bit less argumentative to have long-term happiness? Everything in life is give and take. Don't go into it unwilling to change or unwilling to compromise. If you cater to his standards and not yours, then it should be pretty easy to satisfy the guy. And if he's any man worth his salt, whatever standards that he does bring upon you should not be so crazy that it is now devaluing you or disrespecting you as an individual. I do the exact same thing with my partner. I make sure that if there's something that she's specifically asking of me, or if there's something that she says that she has an issue with, or there's whatever the case may be, I don't just let it ride and say, oh, well, I think otherwise, or you know what, because my opinion of how you feel is different, then that means that your opinion of how you feel, or really just how you feel, is invalid. Most of the times it's more important in those moments to show that I actually do care about making whatever subtle changes I need to make, because I'm not trying to make your life hard, I'm trying to make your life easier. And in turn, I expect the same. When I ask her to do certain things, or if there's something she does I don't like, I simply say, hey, this is what my issue is. This is why I have an issue. Here's what I'd like you to do to change it. Having that level of accountability and also just vulnerability just makes it to where you guys can connect that much quicker. And that's going to make that guy want to lock you down that much faster. And as I said in the beginning, the married are the selected. Best to get chosen. Step number 3, don't be the problem, be the solution. A lot of you ladies are strong, you're proud, you have a lot of things on your mind, you have a lot of things you want to say, and you know what you're talking about. But it's not the fact that you know what you're talking about that's the problem. The problem is the delivery. Sometimes you ladies come across as confrontational, and I think that because of our parents or because of maybe lack thereof, a lot of you ladies are a bit too confrontational, and that's just not cute. Become beauty, become grace. Here's a new rule I want you ladies to live by. There are only a handful of things in this world that cannot be solved with a conversation. If you find yourself having more than that, the problem is not everything else. It's you. If you become his oasis, he'll come running. Because most men, if they again are about they stressed about work, kid, family, money, bills. It is just always a problem. There's always something that you got to deal with. So when I want to come and have a good time with my lady, I don't want that to be interrupted by some argument. My lady is supposed to be my oasis from the and the nonsense that is everyday life. So if I'm worn out in the world, I'm worn at work, I'm worn with whoever it is, and then I come home to who's supposed to be my partner in crime, and she's just tagging on more stress and more anxiety, yeah, I'm not really gonna be looking to lock that down either. Much like a show or music or coffee or a glass of wine or even we run toward our stress relievers. Be his stress reliever and he'll never leave you. Allow him to be vulnerable without using it against him. Do all that for him. And as long as he is a capable man and you have made a good choice, he's gonna do that all for you. Step 4 is a bonus take. You'd always just suck his. Ladies, those are the 4 things I feel like if you just implement, ain't no way that you can't lock down the guy that you try to lock down. Obviously, if he's not trying to lock you down and you doing all 3, all 3, all 4, really all 4. Don't forget that last one. But you doing all 4, ain't no way he don't lock you down. If he's not locking you down, then you need to move on because that dude playing. Clearly he playing because he don't know what the hell he talking about. But if you like those tips, ladies, go ahead, give me a like. Fellas, if you feel like I was on the money, if you feel like there's something else that I missed that these ladies need to be able to implement in order to lock a man down, go ahead and leave that down in the comments. But we're going to move on to our next segment, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. As I said earlier in the video, we are going to be diving into NFL preseason week 1. because the reality is I'm bothering everybody about all my predictions and everything I'm seeing this NFL season, and you know what? I need to tell somebody, so I guess it's you. So we're going to start with the NFL Hall of Fame game with the Detroit Lions versus the LA Chargers, and work our way all the way down to the Miami Dolphins versus the Chicago Bears. Chargers versus Detroit Lions. Trey Lance looking like a solid QB out there. Pretty much of this game, I mean, it was pretty much just a slugfest. I mean, when I say slugfest, I mean just a one-sided beatdown, because the Chargers were just bullying the Detroit Lions the entire time. Detroit wasn't really getting anything going. And honestly, it's not really anything for us to really start looking at right now. Doesn't mean too much, because at the end of the day, this is the preseason. We didn't even see any of the starters play. But it does have me thinking, man, is the Detroit Lions just once again injuries away from being completely just decimated again this year? Ravens beat the Colts. The Ravens looking like the Ravens without their normal starters being able to beat the Colts. I mean, we completely saw this coming. Keaton Mitchell making a nice couple of runs. Anthony Richardson, while looking a little bit better, he still looks like he needs some things he needs to polish, particularly with his understanding of his offense. Hoping for a speedy recovery with his pinky, and I'm really hoping he has a solid season. Otherwise, he's gonna be without a job. But to be fair, Daniel Jones didn't look that much better. So if he really wants it, he shouldn't be that hard to beat. Eagles beat the Bengals. Joe B and the boys, JC, TH, killing it, but continuing to show what their problem is. The Bengals offense, as everybody knows, can put up 40 points a game. They also gonna give up 41. They should hurry up and pay Trey Hendrickson. It's not like they have too many things to depend on as is. Pay the man. Eagles still look like the Eagles. More than likely, they're probably going to end up taking the NFC again. But recent reports say that Landon Dickerson, Pro Bowl guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's out with an injury right now. Might not be out for too long, but if he is out for any extended period of time, that's definitely going to impact Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. The Raiders and Seahawks tie. By far, one of the most boring games to watch this past week. A couple highlights here and there, but for the most part, it just wasn't really all that entertaining. In fact, it was so unentertaining. The most exciting thing that did happen with the Hawks and the Raiders game was Seattle being a bunch of to their old QB, basically comparing him to Jamarcus Russell, saying that he was a bust. That's why shout out to Pete Carroll and Max Crosby for standing up for their boy. It's a new day and age, and it's a new culture, and I like to see it. Browns smacked the Panthers. Shador's NFL debut, completely stunning the crowd. His poise and decision making was, quite frankly, a bit, as I said, poised. He looked patient, he looked confident. Shador had a few mistakes in the beginning, but he didn't turn over the ball. Granted, he was taken out third quarter, but overall, I feel Shador has given enough to be able to show that he deserves a shot to be able to have some reps with the ones. Bryce Young looked nice and confident out there. He even guided one of his receivers back in bounds in order to make a touchdown pass. So yeah, all in all, very impressive game. Can't remember the last time that I actually gave two shits about a Browns or Panthers game, but there you go. Lions redeemed themselves, taking down the Falcons. Well, I'm not sure how much they can enjoy it, considering the quarter ended due to Maurice Norris having a pretty bad injury where he had to get hospitalized. Luckily, Maurice is only in concussion protocols, so he should be turning out okay. Patriots slapped the shit out of the Commanders. Greg May wasn't super impressive, but he looked efficient out there. Trayvon Henderson already showed that he's going to be a problem in this league. I can only imagine the feeling for your first touch in this, and what you would assume to be a very long career is a touchdown run of 100 yards. Mans is a rookie running across the field like he owns it. At this point, the only question is how good of a season he's going to have. Is it just going to be impressive for him being a rookie, or is he going to be putting up some type of Jaden Daniels-like performance at the running back position? Washington just had to learn the lesson that, listen, you guys have not changed as a team. You guys just have Jaden Daniels, so relax. Put your starters in there. Guys pack up the Bills. Jackson Dart, to me, really surprised me. I think that, in my personal opinion, he just appeared to be a mid-tier quarterback. Didn't seem all that impressive, but after watching him this Sunday, I gotta admit, Mans can play. While I still think that the Giants should have selected Shador, I can't deny the kid's tough. He was very poised in the pocket, had a pretty decent run. We can definitely tell he's a bit rugged. He's not all the way polished, but I like his tough style of play. Obviously, he's going to have to clean that up if he wants to have some sort of longevity in this league. But not bad at all. Nothing really of note from the Bills, 2s and 3s in my opinion. Trubisky is Trubisky, and Wilkerson had a nice one-handed catch, but overall, that's not really the main squad you're relying on. We know who the real people are. It's Josh Allen and the boys. Vikings beat the Texans. AJ McCarthy looked nice against the Texans defense. Nothing making you think he's going to dominate the NFC, but he's a decent quarterback. Had a nice game with Jordan Addison, who's going to need whatever reps he can get, considering that he's going to be out for the first 3 weeks because he can't get a driver. Don't drink and drive, kids. But all in all, it was a nice performance. Steelers beat the Jaguars. I was actually really looking forward to this game considering it was going to be Travis Hunter's debut, especially considering the fact they've been hyping up he's going to be playing both sides of the ball. I think everybody's curious to see how he's going to be able to play that out. But watching this has me a little concerned. He was serviceable on the field, catching a couple passes for a couple of yards. He did miss a tackle on defense, but I do question his sustainability being able to play both sides of the ball in this league. Though most likely, Travis is going to end up playing a lot more offense. The Jaguars need consistent weapons for Trevor Lawrence to be able to use, and right now, that weapon is Travis Hunter. Don't be surprised to see him only as a very small feature on the defense. Rams beat the Cowboys. Not to see the Rams secondary putting in some work, showing that the Rams are going to have some level of depth, which should give you guys a little bit of some confidence, especially with all the reports about Matthew Stafford having back injuries. It's only natural to start asking the question about how long he can last. But more importantly, the Cowboys in Dallas continuing to show that offense, defense, they've got problems. But most importantly, their biggest problem is their defense. I can think of a guy that's inside their building at this very moment who very much so could help out that problem. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up trading him away. And Micah, I don't blame you for wanting to be traded away. I won't be mad if he comes to Chicago. Just do not send him to Philadelphia. Buccaneers sweep the Titans. Though Cam Ward called his team mid, I thought that his performance was fairly decent. Cam looked extremely poised in the pocket. Didn't really look like he was folding under the pressure. There was a couple of frustrating drives I could tell, and times where I went to my kitchen to get myself a refill of water and come back and these guys are already kicking the ball. But for what it's worth, I think Tennessee is smart, and I think they can see the talent with this kid, and they'll definitely continue to build around him. In other news, Shiloh, he almost got himself a sack. Didn't see more from Shiloh as a football player, but as a human being and as an individual, my man's is hilarious, and he's just got a fantastic personality, so I'm rooting for you. Jets destroy the Packers. Being I'm from Chicago, I was rooting for Jay Fields to be able to get QB1 someplace where he was going to be appreciated. Admittedly, Jay Fields has had a couple of issues with being more sure of himself when he was in the pocket, which is why, and being able to just make something out of nothing, quite frankly, which was why I was a lot more accepting of the idea of having Caleb Williams come into the organization. The fact is that we just needed somebody who's going to make something out of nothing, and it just wasn't going to be Jay Fields. It had to be somebody else. But seeing him out there today, he looked poised, he looked confident. I loved seeing the fact that he had defenders that were inches away from him and he was still locked down fields and he didn't run until he absolutely had to. And when he did, he was able to make that nice 13-yard touchdown run. Impressive. I hope he finds success with the Steelers, but since they're pretty much stupid over there, I'm glad he's found a home with the Jets. Hope he does well as their QB. Hope he does well as a QB, and I hope the Jets have much success in the future. Oh, and the Panthers suck, so the Packers. Cardinals edge out the Chiefs. This is the one game I didn't watch. Just based on the highlights alone, it didn't really seem all that noteworthy. Pat Mahomes did play, which is always a treat, but at the end of the day, this is just a preseason game. And again, much like the Bills and the Lions, I'm not too worried about them losing. It's just a preseason, but again, it just exposes what level of depth do they have. Are they just injuries away from being out of the playoffs? Broncos handle the Niners. No real starters from San Fran, but starters did play in Denver. Not too impressed with Bo Nix's drive in the beginning. He only played for a drive or two and came out. Wasn't able to come away with a touchdown. He looked very poised, but again, not as efficient as we'd like him to be. A lot of people are saying that Jaden Daniels is going to get a quarterback slump just because he has such a insurmountable mountain that he needs to top in order for him to have a comparable season to his previous year. But if there's any quarterback I feel like is going to have a true sophomore slump, I think it's going to be Bo Nix. Chargers light up the Saints. Comes to New Orleans and Spencer Rattler, it just seems like everybody's kind of all over the place. Some people love him, some people hate him. A lot of people just kind of agree that he's not going to be your winning guy. But quite frankly, he can't handle pressure. He had a couple of completions and he had a couple of nice plays with his legs. But at the end of the day, he's just got to find a way to put him away when he gets to those end drives. He just wasn't able to come away with points. Tyler Show had some impressive moments, even leading the touchdown drive, but he did have a pick six, which is pretty costly, so it kind of negates your touchdown. He's definitely going to have to polish up his accuracy if he wants to beat out Spencer for the job. Though all of this could have been solved if you just drafted Shador. Last but not least, the Miami Dolphins tie with the Chicago Bears. Bears defense looked amazing in that first quarter. None of our starters played, but we were able to have a huge red zone stop. Noah Sewell was just out there putting in havoc, even getting to see Ben Johnson get hyped on the sidelines. Austin Booker, 3 sacks. I expect he's going to be utilized a lot more in the Bears defense. Ruben Hippolyte, drafted in the 5th round, looked aggressive and athletic. Nothing too major, had a couple of tackles, but all in all, I look forward to seeing him work in the future. Miami played well with a couple of redeeming plays from Zach Wilson from the Jets. Tyson Bagent and Case Keenum earned their keep as real solid backups in this NFL. They definitely show you that while they're not as appreciated as they should be because they don't get all the stars and shine that the star and starting quarterback get, they provide a security blanket for the team that should Caleb or should their starters get a injury, they're able to step up and keep the team afloat, either to the end of the road or at least until the starter's able to recover. Tyson Bagent, I think, could possibly even get himself a starting job someplace. Where, I don't know. I mean, honestly, any place that's struggling with a quarterback would definitely benefit from having him. But selfishly, I just want him here because he's such a great quarterback, and him being behind Caleb, it just gives us so much comfort here in Chicago. But that's all for this week. Let me know what you think. Did you watch this NFL preseason? Do you guys tune in? Are you guys as focused in on what these preseason games mean, or am I just the only person that is crazy? Let me know what it is, what games that you watched. Let me know what details I missed. Let me know if there's a play that you've got your eye on. But that's all for this week. We'll carry on with this one next time for the next week of the preseason games. We'll see you then. All right, guys, back in with another segment, and this time we're going to talk about the new live-action One Piece. Because if you guys saw season 1, you know that we got to get some more of that greatness. We don't get that many anime live-action adaptations that actually work, so the fact that they are able to pull this off with One Piece of all properties, it's just excited. It has me excited as an anime fan. It has me excited as a fan of One Piece. But with the release of season 2's trailer, which is really more so of a teaser, just kind of going through a couple of scenes that are in the Grand Line, it had me thinking about the top 10 things that I'm actually excited for when it comes to One Piece season 2. At number 10, none of these are in necessarily particular order. Starting off at number 10 is actually the introduction of more warlords and emperors of the sea. You see, we did get introduced to Mihawk in season 1. We saw how badass he was, cutting an entire ship in half with one swing. But as you know, there are 7 warlords of the sea. I would imagine just because of what's going on in the current One Piece anime that maybe they want to show a couple of scenes of Kuma being in Log Town, or just something along the lines of, introducing more warlords. Also, that's going to go into my next point, which is going to also kind of tie in the second half of my last point, Robin and Crocodile inside of season 2. I am super excited to see Robin be able to take the stage. She had a pretty menacing introduction because she's very plain-faced, so she's very mysterious because you can't really read her. But then as the story goes on, we find out just how interesting of a character she can be. Crocodile is kind of expanding on my last point, which is that he is spoiler, and you only get one of them warnings. He is actually a warlord of the sea, and I can't wait to have him implemented inside the story. I can't remember the actor's name, but I remember watching that interview where he and the actress for Robin were talking about their roles and what it is that they are taking away from the story. And both of the actors, they seem pretty hyped. They seem pretty knowledgeable. They knew what they was talking about. He was referencing things about Crocodile's past with Whitebeard, so it had me pretty pumped. But yeah, I just hope that because Whitebeard does have such a big role in Crocodile's backstory, I am hoping that we get to see at least a glimpse of what it is that he looks like, because that would be a nice treat for the fans. The third thing I'm looking forward to is Zoro versus Luffy, part 2, part 1, because I guess they kind of clash a little bit, but really a real fight between Zoro versus Luffy. In the trailer, we see a scene of Luffy and the gang pulling up to a cactus island. If I'm not mistaken, this is Whiskey Peak, and there is a brief, not super long and drawn out, but a brief conflict between Luffy and Zoro where they actually do have a fight. I just think that the visuals on that, considering how they were able to do all of the fights in the previous season, I think that that's going to look pretty nice. The next thing I'm looking forward to, Drum Island. If you guys saw the nice teaser with the incredibly cute little reindeer, Tony Chopper is going to be a massive part and the star character of Drum Island, and that arc is not super action-packed, but the story and the lore of the world definitely expands because of it. It's just a really solid arc, and I can't wait to hear Hero Luck's speech. Next thing I want to see is more from Garp in the B plot. I know that Garp is, or I guess you could say was, implemented a whole lot more inside of the first part of One Piece season 1 and throughout the entirety of the season. But for those of you who are manga readers, you know that Garp didn't really play much of a role at all until after the Alabasta arc. So there's no reason that they can't change up the story again to have another B plot when it comes to the Marines. But then again, the Marines kind of play a role at the end of the Alabasta arc, but that would be getting into season 3 territory. Also, I'm just really looking forward to seeing the Giants. I mean, the Giants and the way that they looked with Nami looking up at Brogy, I just can't wait to see all of this scale that is in the One Piece world, because if you don't know, things inside of One Piece are massive. Another small thing I want to see is Tashigi and Zoro. I won't spoil what it is that their connection is in terms of their past if you have not actually read or watched the One Piece series, but she's an important character and she's going to become a reoccurring character, and I definitely can see that they will be trying to expand her role to give Zoro a little bit more depth as a character, to kind of add a little bit more to his stoicism. Moving on to number 6, Dragon. Monkey D. Dragon. We've seen the grandpa, we've seen the grandson, but what about the prodigal son? Monkey D. Dragon is the leader of the Revolutionary Army going up against the scumbag world government, and this is the first time that we actually get to see him inside of the story. Will they divulge a little bit more, talking a little bit more about his devil fruit, if he even has one? I'm sure Oda's gonna give the writers something to throw in there to give the fans even more of a tease than he already does. Implementing hockey earlier into the story. So Smoker being introduced into the story is really important because he is the first Logia devil fruit user inside of One Piece that is actually fully introduced. Problem with that is that as One Piece developed, Oda started to expand the story, he started to change concepts, and he started to rework things and definitely retcon a couple of things to try to make things a little bit more interesting. One of those concepts is hockey, which is basically like ki or the force, or like an innate energy source that allows people to impose their will upon the world. We didn't really see too much of this, and it wasn't even fully mentioned as a true concept until the legit end of the first half of the story, which is over 500 chapters, by the way. So now that we're introducing Smoker as a Logia, I think that it would be a perfect time for us to start trying to introduce things like hockey. I'm not saying that we have to have somebody come in there and, you know what I'm saying, have full-blown armament or, you know what I'm saying, observation, but just some mention of, you know, maybe Smoker's fighting against Luffy and he has a quick line like, you know, you're not advanced enough to be able to fight guys like me, but and here in the East Blue, since it's so peaceful, I'm basically invincible. Kind of giving an illusion that there are ways to touch him, but they're just not quite there yet. And the last two I will say, because they are basically joined to the hip, is Ace and Blackbeard. Blackbeard doesn't necessarily show up within the portion of the story that this is supposed to be covering, but Ace is supposed to appear briefly within the story before Alabasta. I could totally see them expanding his role and just giving him more of a badass intro, because obviously he's an integral portion of the story. But also, and kind of more importantly, seeing Blackbeard, getting some teases as to Zay-Ha-Ha-Ha's whereabouts and what he's doing during this time of the story, because if you don't know, he's bad news. I mean, if you can't tell, the dude is based off of Blackbeard. But yeah, those are all the things that I am super excited for when it comes to One Piece Season 2. Obviously, as they drop more trailers and we can see more things that they're planning to include inside of the story, I'm going to tune in with you guys and I'm going to let you guys know exactly what it is that we plan to do. But I thank you guys for watching. Let me know what it is that you think. What are your hopes for One Piece Season 2? And we will catch you guys in the next video. Hey guys, it's Tony with the TD World. Thanks for checking out this video. Remember, don't run, don't hide, don't be shy. Just like, comment, please subscribe. See you next time.
Let me dealing with the stress, let me dealing with the pain. Getting trying to find a way.